Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann-Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm just so excited to be here with you again this week, talking about, talk about a confession. So I literally just had a therapy session yesterday with my therapist, at the time of the recording of this, and really was confronting something that I've known for a long time, but I haven't 100% verbalized or, really integrated fully. And it dovetails so well with the topic that I'm covering in today's session that I was like, okay, the universe is putting this sort of challenge in front of me of like confessing something that I'm not really fully 100% to terms with yet. And I think I'm going to go for it. So, my confession for this week for you all is that I think that I started my coaching business for the wrong reasons. And it's an interesting thing to confront for me personally, to think that something that exists, and I know for a fact that my practice like does a world of good in this world. It's made a huge difference in my clients' lives, in their children's lives. Like the idea I have that I'm sort of making the world a better place by healing people's childhoods, like I know that that's a true thing that my business does. And at the same time, like, that's not really why I started my business. I started my business for a lot of egocentric reasons, about validating myself, about having permission to, kind of just tell everybody what's up, to validate my own style of parenting, to bolster myself when I felt insecure about my parenting. Like, these are all very selfish, very, I would say, shameful almost reasons to start a business that's all about helping other people. But those are very true things for myself. And it's kind of funny today in the group call. It was just a coincidence, but there were like three moms in a row on the group call who basically had, my kid is going through this thing, and how do I talk to my kids so that they're not dealing with this anymore? So one of them was, my kid, every time he doesn't get what he wants, he throws a tantrum and he tells me it's his fault when he gets a consequence, or it's my fault when he gets a consequence. I didn't get to do what I want, so I threw a tantrum. So then I had to take some space in my room. And while I'm being taken to my room, I'm saying, this is your fault, Mom. It's your fault that I threw a tantrum in the first place. Right. And so this mom was like, what are ways that I can sit down and talk to my kid about like accountability and blame, and so that he doesn't grow up to just be this person who, blames everybody for his problems. And then the second mom was like, my kid is really struggling with like being afraid of doing anything by himself. Like, I have to walk him to the bathroom. He won't go, everything I have to do with him. And it's like, I can't keep up with this. And then also it's like, why is he afraid? What's a way that I can talk to him that will help him, get past this moment of his life where he's having all this fear. Right. And so, and a couple more conversations like that, but those are some really good examples. And for all of these moms, during our coaching together, there came a point where they realized like, oh, I know why I want to get tips from you for a conversation. It's because I want to learn how to kind of quote unquote fix or change or educate or teach my child these things that I want them to know. And so if you tell me some really great ways of talking to them, that's how they're going to level up or learn this lesson or overcome this challenge that they're going through or whatever, and all that stuff. And so we had a little, realization, like almost chuckle of like, oh yeah, okay, right. So I'm trying to get you to teach me how to be more coercive in a conversation with my kid. And it's like, yeah, now you see. And one of the moms was like,
I just, I really needed this refresher today because it's my tendency to like slip into lecturing. So I give the consequence, it's all good, but then afterwards I just talk and talk and talk about now, see, you don't have to, if you don't throw a tantrum when you don't get your way, you won't end up in your room and on it, and it's important for you to take responsibility and it's your job, it's your, decision that led you to be in your bedroom. It's not my fault. It's your fault, like this lecture sort of stuff. And she's like, I really slip into the lecture mode. And I jokingly said, I was like, yes, lecturing feels so good sometimes. And she's like, God, how do I stop that? And I was like, well, I really recommend starting your own coaching practice so you can scratch that lecturing itch, but not do it at your kids. And obviously, of course, we all laughed about that and chuckled, but I think it's actually kind of true for me. That's my confession for you. I think one of the reasons why I started my coaching practice was so that I had to like permissible space to finger wag and lecture and judge and all of those things, which, by the way, of course, like after being in my coaching practice for as long as I have since 2017, I can tell you that all of those behaviors are terrible coaching behaviors. They don't help clients at all. I don't do those things anymore in my practice, but I have to admit that in the beginning, it felt very delicious to finally have a platform where someone wanted to listen to me. I was seen as wise and knowledgeable, and I could just, get on my soapbox and give a spiel about everything that came up. And I do think that it actually helped my parenting because I scratched that itch so well during my workday that it became so much easier for me to just shut the freak up when I was talking to my kids. Although I'm sure if they were here right now, they might beg to differ. They just don't even know all the things I didn't say to them. So, what we're talking about today, it's probably something you've heard before. It weirdly has come up like 3 or 4 times in different contexts, and it is the WAIT acronym, WAIT, which in this context we're using to stand for the sentence, why am I talking? If you can remember that WAIT acronym when you're in an interaction with your kid, you will practically overnight become a way better parent than you were the day before. Listening to your own inner voice instead of reacting to it and being like, oh, I feel insecure. I have to say something. Or, oh, I'm anxious that my kid's never going to learn to take responsibility. I have to give him a talk about responsibility, right? Like that's a reactive way for us to, um, you know, engage with our emotions or whatever's going on internally for us. But if we can wait, literally, why am I talking? First of all, half the time you're going to realize I'm talking because I'm trying to deal with my own shit. That's nobody's business but my own. And it's not for me to put that on my kid. And so you won't talk, or you'll talk to your therapist or your coach instead of your kid about, oh gosh, I'm really worried that my kid's going to grow up and never be an accountable human and an adult who takes responsibility for himself. That's a really real fear. And also, it's your fear, it's your emotion. Our emotions are our job. So that WAIT acronym is like, oh, right. All of the stuff talking I'm doing is to assuage this turmoil that's going on inside of me, which means that it's actually has no business being in between me and my kid. Well, that's for me to talk about later or work through later. But also, a lot of times it's why am I talking? I'm talking to make myself feel better. I'm talking to make myself feel smart. I'm talking because I don't want to hear what the other person has to say. I'm talking because it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing. I'm talking because I'm trying to control the other person. If you ask yourself, why am I talking throughout the day? I bet you 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be, hmm, actually, it's not necessary for me to talk right now. And I can tell you this is a very useful tool in marriages, in friendships, in other family relationships, not just the parent-child relationship. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in relationships that is really just about feeding our own egos. And that's the real simple soundbite answer to that wait question. Why am I talking? To feed my ego. Why did I start my coaching practice? To feed my ego. I love the sound of my own voice. Why did I start a podcast? Because I love the sound of my own voice, right? Well, that's really cool. But in a parenting relationship, loving the sound of your own voice is not a good enough reason to be talking. And there are so many times when we could be pumping the brakes and realizing, okay, silence is golden right now. I'm going to be 10 times more effective if I bite my tongue. There actually isn't even a problem here. So I don't even need to worry about being effective. There's not a destination or a goal that we even need to be reaching. And I think that's the realization that a couple of these clients had today in our session was, okay, why am I talking? Because I don't want my kid to be afraid of the dark anymore. Why am I talking? Because I want my kid to take responsibility. Okay, well, those are desires that we have for our children. And we don't really get to have goals and set goals for other people, even our kids. Now, one of these moms decided, okay, so that's not the kind of conversation I'm going to have. I'm not going to have a conversation at all. Why am I talking? I'm just going to be quiet. The other mom realized she still really does want to have a conversation with her kid, but she wanted it to not be about trying to get him to be unafraid anymore. She just wanted it to be about listening to him tell her what he needs to not, feel afraid. Or not have to deal with this thing that he's afraid of. And so we completely changed the answer to that why am I talking question. And that's another thing that you can do with this acronym is reveal to yourself what your motivations are, and then you get to pick. Do I actually still want to serve that motivation, or do I want a different motivation? If I have a more pure, more aligned motivation that comes from self, what might that be? Oh, I get it. Understanding my kid and, knowing the best way to show up for him. Great reason to be talking. Even greater reason to be listening, but that's a whole nother conversation. So think about that WAIT acronym. I'm sure for most of the people listening to this, it's not the first time you've heard it. Maybe it is, but it exists in the workplace, and it exists in schools, and it exists anywhere where nonviolent communication is a priority. This idea of asking yourself, why am I talking? And with that, my answer to that question is, I don't need to be talking anymore. I said everything I need to say. So I'm going to say goodbye. And if you're ready to get some support and work with me and feel connected to me more than in this passive way, set up that free discovery call for yourself. Well, you will hear me listening a lot more than you'll hear me talking. And we'll go from there. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.